Some leaders leave footprints, others leave libraries. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Hey there, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Authors on Mission podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Hutchinson, and you are in for something special today. This is our guest, Ken Spanky Moskowitz. Picture his story. One day, he's helping people with their Facebook ad copies, and before you know it, he's built ad zombies into a global copywriting empire, serving over 40,000 businesses. But he didn't stop there. He kind of took his decades of advertising experience and turned it into a book, Jab Till It Hurts, a book that's helping entrepreneurs transform their businesses. And just when you think that you got him figured out, he also wrote Bread Time Stories, which is a cookbook that's not only really fun and punny, but it's revolutionizing how we teach kids to bake. So without further ado, we're going to talk about all these different things that Ken has done and how it relates to the writing world. And we're going to see how we can learn from his different experiences. So, Ken, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a real honor to chat with you.
Thanks for having me. It's so nice to do a podcast that's not all business, because that's typically the podcasts that I'm asked to be on. And I love this because I can talk about the writing and the book stuff, which is really just an outlet for me. And it's so much fun.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, our podcast is all about, of course, we do touch upon business topics sometimes with our guests, but it's more about how we take those concepts and put them into the written word and how we form them to be marketable pieces that can, be very profitable and widespread and just be pulled right off the shelves. So
yep.
Yeah, and that's something you definitely did in all of your works. So I think I gave like a good sort of rundown of some of the things you've done, but I don't think I really even touched the surface of your back history. I was looking through more of your things. You've been a DJ and you've worked with brands like NBA, ESPN. I mean, tell us a little bit more. Fill in some of the gaps there. What did I not touch upon yet that maybe our listeners want to know about you?
All right. Danielle, I'll try to condense like the last 40 years of my life, basically into a small little monologue. I started out wanting to be in radio. Radio was the thing for me that I grew up listening to, and I was in love with the art of communication. And so as a kid, while all my family and friends were going to the beach on the weekends, and I grew up in New York, so we would go to Rockaway, Jones Beach, Fire Island, I wanted to stay home and hang out in my bedroom and make mixtapes. But my mixtapes were not the normal mixtape. I was making mixtapes of ads. I loved advertising. And so for me, my career started when I was a kid, and it was this passion for advertising. And that's where my career started. I would write ads and recreate ads as a kid in my bedroom. And over time, I realized I really liked doing this, but I still wanted to be in radio. And the only way you could be in radio is to be on the air as a DJ. So of course I didn't know any better. Went into radio, and then my opportunity came knocking. The production director was going on vacation. That's the person who makes the ads or does the creative production at the station. And they were going on vacation and they needed someone to fill in. Well, I had all the skills because I grew up doing that in my bedroom. So I'm like, I volunteered as quickly as I could to be that guy. And I fell in love with the production room, and I never looked back. So writing ads, creating ads, editing, and recording them was what I did for years and years and years. As my career advanced, I went to work for different companies, bigger companies, and moved up the quote food chain of broadcasting, and suddenly started having opportunities to talk to brands and work with them and work on their creative campaigns. And eventually I moved up into a creative director's role. And so as I moved through companies and as I moved up roles and ranks, I just had exposure to lots of people and lots of brands and companies and market managers. And anyway, the shorter version of this, which I'll get to now, is when I left the corporate world, I made that announcement in 2010 that I was going to leave and go out on my own. my company was kind enough to send out a corporate email to not just everyone in our company, because they thought I was a lifer. That's what they call people in this company that were going to stay forever. And they thought I was a lifer that would retire there. They sent out an email to the entire company and all of the clients. And they wanted to wish me well in my future endeavors, and that I was going to be spending, like, I forgot what the term was, but I agreed to stay on for a few months to help not only interview my replacement, but train them. And so we left on really good terms. But that opportunity was what opened the door for these clients who've worked with me in that space to come and work with me privately. And so when I hung out my business shingle, my first client was M&M Mars. And, so that's how this whole thing started. I'm passionate about advertising first and foremost, which is writing and creating the ads, which then led to me growing businesses, which led to me writing books. And, how is that for a not so short answer?
I think it was the perfect answer, because you kind of filled in the blanks, like I said, that I hadn't quite touched upon, because I think it's really important that you mentioned you've always been into advertising. And I was kind of laughing to myself. I'm like, most little kids want to be astronauts or president. You're like, I like ads.
Yep.
You're sitting there in your room making those mixtapes. It's amazing that you took that passion though, and you didn't stop. You just kind of kept going with it until here you are now, right? I mean, M&M's, that's a huge client. And the fact that your boss just sent that nice farewell to you too. I mean, okay, you made your way in the world. And most importantly, what I'd like to circle back to is, you're right, advertising is writing. I mean, that's a huge skill. And I think what I would love to touch upon in this podcast is sort of the differences that you've noticed between, writing for advertisements versus writing for the books versus writing for the cookbook, which is all completely different things.
Very.
So I guess that's where I'd like to branch off to now. I mean, let's talk about what it's like to write an ad, for example, because all our listeners here, they're interested in writing their books, but in a way, your book, especially any business book that you might be writing, is an ad for yourself. So
it is.
Tell us a little bit about that. Like, what are some things that when you're writing an ad that maybe you'd want to keep in mind as you go ahead and do that?
Sure. First of all, anyone who's writing a book has the ability to write ads. The difference is you have to apply the energy of what you're thinking about writing to the person who you want to receive the message, right? So when you write an ad, you write to an individual. So even if the ad is meant for a large group of people, you're always having to think of one person. And so you think of an avatar. And, in the ad industry, it's funny, as a 57-year-old male, I'm one of the few people that companies come to when they have a challenge marketing to women, because I'm really effective at writing messages for women. Why? Because I write messages that come from the heart, and I write messages that connect emotionally with people. And so my advertising is usually, it makes people laugh. It connects with them in a very deeply emotional, sometimes profound way. And so those are the things that I do. When I'm writing, I think of who am I writing for, and how can this product, this service, benefit, change, transform their life in a positive way. And now I will also say this, I don't write ads for products I don't believe in. And I'm not going to sit here and I'm not on some moral high horse, because I'm not. But if someone wants me to sell or to write an ad for a product that is just snake oil, I just won't touch it. And it's not that I have a moral issue with their decision. I just can't write something that I don't believe. And it's really difficult for me to write something that moves people to take action on something that I just think is a bunch of BS. And so, for me, copywriting, advertising is a very emotional, storytelling driven craft. And it is my first love, truly my first love.
I love that. And you know what? You perfectly related that exactly to what it's like to write a book. I mean, we're writing to our audience as we're writing our books. You're writing to the customer when you're writing advertisements. So, I mean, just in itself, you're targeting it to whoever you're hoping to, it's going to impact. I mean, at the end of a book, I always say to my clients, you need to end with a call to action. Like you gotta get them to do whatever it is they want them to do next, whether it's to buy your next book or to buy your product or to look at your courses that you might have, whatever it is. And that's kind of what your aim is then too, is to get them to buy whatever product or service you're offering.
Correct.
I want to circle back to that snake oil comment you meant, because I actually had to look that up myself. I hadn't actually heard that term used before. Deceptive marketing, right? A fraud or a scam. So I'm guessing that means you've been offered to create ads for products that you were just like no way. Like, do you have any examples of that you might want to share?
Yeah, and I'll give you a very recent example. I was asked to create an ad for an erectile dysfunction product that was not medical. It was a bunch of herbs and roots, but when I went the first thing I did was, after having the conversation, is I went into Perplexity and to Chrome and to Google, and between those two engines, I did some digging. I did some research, and I wanted to know about the efficacy of each of these ingredients that are supposedly the miracle drug. And I'm like, there's no evidence. In fact, there's nothing. It's just they're combining things to make this thing. So basically what they're doing is they're making an herb to sell people who are desperate for a solution. And I just won't play that game. For years, I wouldn't write ads for alcohol. By the way, I drink wine. I drink booze. Why? Because I didn't want to have the wrong audience, especially if it's an ad that's running on the radio before radio became less relevant, or on TV. I didn't want to feel like the ad that I created influenced a kid to drink or someone who shouldn't drink to drink. It's the same reason when I have a friend over who might, and I do have a friend who's an alcoholic, I'm very conscious of, we're gonna have people drinking. I need to let them know this, because I want to feel like I'm doing the right thing. And so a lot of times, I don't reject a lot, but throughout my 40 years, and I started young, so throughout my 40 years, I've probably rejected 40 or 50 writing jobs, which isn't a lot overall.
I was going to say, compared to how many you probably get per year, I'd assume it's not that much. It's only the ones that really are just like, no, like this does not resonate with me. I'm not touching that. So
correct. I mean, throughout my career, I've written and created over 100,000 ads. So
wow, okay,
that's a lot.
Whenever somebody asks me like how many books I've angel written or edited, I kind of have to stop and be like, honestly, like at least over 200 by now. I kind of lost count, but yeah, I mean, for you to tally up that many, hey, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
But yeah, I mean, circling it back to the idea of just like choosing your own projects, I think that's something that a lot of authors too kind of realizes in their power and their control. I mean, in the everyday world, many of us are in our jobs and we're kind of obligated to work with whatever clients our bosses are putting us with or whatever it is. But when you're writing a book, that's kind of the benefit. You get to choose your own topic. You got to select the products you want to advertise, same way that anybody else, when they're picking their topic, it's important for you to pick what resonates most with you. And that's kind of an
right.
Maybe we don't think about it as much when we're starting to write.
And Danielle, you could be diverse in your topics too. You don't have to have just one path. And as you saw with the baking book,
you're a perfect example of that.
Right, versus the business book right now. And I wasn't actually going to tell anybody. I'll share it with you just because we're having this conversation. I'm working on two completely different books at the same time. So I'm going to just share with the audience just so that you know what I'm working on. So I'm working on one book.
Wait, hold on. Is this the first reveal? Do we get a special?
This is actually a first reveal.
No.
Only the people closest to me know these that I'm working on. Actually, they know I'm working on one. Nobody knows I'm working on the other because I made the decision to work on the other around the end of the year, and I just started doing my research on it. So,
to our listeners right now, we're in for a treat. Maybe we should do like a little metaphorical drum roll here. Yeah. Let us know what are the topics.
So the first book is a very niche audience, and the book is called Rectal Candor. The reason it's called Rectal Candor is because in 2023, I was diagnosed with stage 3 rectal cancer. And I went through surgery, months of chemo, months of radiation, and 2 more surgeries. In fact, my final surgery was April 14th of 2024. So I'm literally 10 months out from treatment. So why I'm writing this book is because there are a lot of people who've gone through rectal cancer specifically, who've gone through a procedure called a lower or low anterior resection. And doctors are thrilled that we've saved your life. You no longer have cancer. But the ramifications and what you're left with, the repercussions of that surgery are life-changing for many people. And they don't talk about those things. So I've been talking to people who are rectal cancer survivors, 7,000 of them, and we're sharing common experiences, common challenges. And I decided to write a book about not only my journey, but the things that doctors should be talking about that they're not talking about. And now I'm actually talking to a medical board that does colorectal surgeons, and I'm sharing with them my experiences. And because I'm a public speaker, I'm having a conversation with them about potentially speaking at one of their conferences from a patient perspective, not a medical provider perspective. So I'm writing that book. So that's a true, like, that's not, you know, that's an experience-based book. The other book that I'm writing is, and I'll tell you, I got inspired. So while I was going through treatment, I started binge watching a lot of shows, which is not normal for me. Because I wasn't doing a lot of work for a year, I spent time watching shows, and I discovered a lot of shows by Taylor Sheridan, and I love his storytelling. He's done Yellowstone, 1883, 1923, Lioness, Tulsa King, Landman, for those of you who don't know all his shows. He's an incredible storyteller. And I had this idea, it probably for 15, 20 years in the back of my head, and I just never did anything with it. And so I started working on bringing this idea to life, and I'm writing a total fiction novel about a paramilitary operations officer, which is the most dangerous position in the CIA. And why? Because I was inspired.
I was actually saying, like, wow, because like you're going here now from cookbook to thought leadership to medical, now to fiction and adventure. Yeah. So I'm
because
like,
you don't have to stay.
Mind blown.
Here, what happens is, and my belief is, oftentimes people put themselves in a box. I'm a fiction writer. I'm a romance writer. I had a friend, Monique Ellis, who was a romance writer. If you Google search Monique Ellis, she passed away several years ago, but she was a romance writer, and she put herself in the box of romance. She could have written far more than romance. So I don't believe in putting myself in a box of, well, this is what I write. You know, just because my first book was a book about how I grew my business doesn't mean my next book has to be about that. And it wasn't. It was about baking, which is a hobby. And, you know, my third book is going to be about my cancer journey. My fourth book is going to be about this. It's going to be a spy novel, right? So you as long as you're passionate and a prolific writer, you can write about anything.
I mean, this is just something that a lot of people don't think about because, for example, I spoke to an amazing author the other week who, you know, his whole brand was about traveling and communicating different cultures, and he had amazing books and amazing things. And we had a whole conversation about how it's important to build that brand because it kind of draws the audience into you. They know what they're expecting from you. But this is a whole other side of it that I think our listeners are going to really benefit from hearing, because you don't have to put yourself in that box that you just said. You can pick your own topic. You can select whatever is passionate to you in the moment. And by doing so, that is going to enhance the quality of your work because you're passionate about it. You're not
yes
through the mud. It's something you're loving to write about. I could see it in your eyes. Like every topic you just talked about, you're lit up the room when you're speaking about it. So I can only imagine how that affects the.
I never like feeling like I have to do the same thing twice. It's why if I'm working on an ad campaign or multiple ad campaigns, I will spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes working on one, then jump to another, because your brain loses interest quickly. And my ADD brain loses interest in things quickly. So what I do is I move from project to project, which keeps my thought process fresh. And then I do some things that some writers historically have done. Stephen King's one of them. When I go to bed at night, I will write down the problem I'm trying to solve, the thought I'm trying to work through. And I will read that. I'll have it on a yellow legal pad next to my bed. and I will read it out loud sometimes, but I'll read it 2, 3, 4 times right before I go to sleep and let my subconscious process it while I'm sleeping, because your subconscious is able to process way more data than your conscious brain. And so when I wake up in the morning, I don't put on the TV, I don't listen to music. I just sit and I have my coffee. And when those thoughts start coming to me, I start writing them down. And so it really gives a clean workspace to allow my brain to do its best work creatively.
Well, it's definitely a tip that I haven't yet heard about, just writing down the problem before you sleep and then thinking about it as you're sleeping. To clarify, are you referring specifically to problems while you're writing, or just life problems in general, or whatever it is that might be on your mind at that moment?
Anything I'm trying to solve, any challenge, typically it's creative ideation. But if I'm dealing with a challenging situation, I will write, how do I solve this problem? Here's what I'm trying to solve, right? And what happens is I go to bed and I go to sleep, and I'm not aware that these processes are happening while I'm sleeping, but the brain is doing its job and it's working for you while you're asleep. And so when you wake up and you write down the garbage that comes out of your brain unedited, the answers are in that. Now, when I started doing this years ago, at first it took 15 or 20 days before something I would get any answer. I thought, this is never going to work, but I kept doing it. Now, if I write down a question before bed, I have an answer the next morning, and it's without fail. And so when you train your brain to do that, to problem solve while you're sleeping, you become far more efficient at problem solving.
I'm just really loving this idea. I mean, for example, when I go to sleep, my boyfriend loves to watch sitcoms. So sometimes I wake up to hearing like Joey and Chandler making jokes on the TV, right? But like if instead you're thinking about your problem and your solution and, having that mind space right before you go to sleep, just kind of programming your mind to do what you want it to do, like how productive can you be and how inspired you'll be in the morning too. I can only imagine. I'm assuming you kind of get right out of bed and then you get right to that problem if it happened to come into your brain as you're dreaming, right?
Yeah, it's there. I'm not conscious of it when I wake up until I'm sitting down with my coffee, and then the idea starts to come. And I'm like, oh, okay, there it is. There's what I was looking for. So oftentimes if I'm stuck on an ad and I'm looking for the right word, the right emotion, whatever I'm trying to convey, I'll just write down the problem, sleep on it, and have a solution in the morning.
Yeah, it's an amazing tactic. And I'm realizing a lot of the things that we're talking about today does have to go towards sort of like that problem solving, but also creativity building, because, one great tip we talked about is choosing whatever speaks to you in the moment. Here's another one now too, like think about it as you're going to sleep. So I'm liking that we're kind of building these little tips here for our listeners about the writing process too.
And Danielle, that's how Stephen King did it. I don't know if you know the story of Misery. He was on a plane, and if I remember the story correctly, I hope I don't butcher the story, and I may. He was on a plane, fell asleep while he was on the flight, and I think he was going to England. And when he woke up, he had dreamed the story of an author who was on a plane going to a thing, or in a car going to a thing, and crashed, and this psychotic fan took him in and tortured him. He wrote it down on napkins. He started to be, because he was dreaming this. So the subconscious is where this happened. And so it's moments like that made me go, I can use my subconscious that way. So he started doing this where he would think about something or go to sleep, and it would come to him in the morning. But that's how Misery was written.
Yeah, I mean, as you can see, you actually can't see right here. I have some Stephen King books right here on the shelf right here. So I'm a big fan of his. I never knew that story though. I mean, but that's incredible because you never know where these ideas can come from, right? It could be, when you fall asleep, but also like everyday moments too. I mean, for example, how did you get inspired to write the book about bread, right? I mean, you mentioned, I think that you learned about baking from your grandmother.
Yep.
But why in that time of your life did you decide to jump into that genre?
So let me start with, I adored my grandmother, and boy, she couldn't cook. She was a terrible cook, but boy, could she bake. And everything she baked was magnificent. And so as a kid, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. They lived right around the corner from us. And, I was in that kitchen every time she was baking. and it was fun to be around grandma's kitchen. And so I watched and I learned. And then my neighbor, Mary DiLorenzo, old Italian lady, she baked, and I watched her bake because, again, very tight-knit Queens neighborhood. And so for me, there was a love of baking as a child. Fast forward, I realized that a lot of my friends, my wife, my kids, they all have hobbies. They all have things. This is my hobby. I work, I create, right? But I didn't really have, outside of that, something that I was passionate about. And I thought, okay, I really need to work on a hobby. And I'm like, what do I like doing? Oh, I like baking. I'm going to try baking. And so I started baking several years ago, and I pulled out some of my grandma's recipes, her cheesecake recipe. And if you've ever had New York cheesecake,
My favorite.
right? So I with the water bath, and I'm like, okay, now I'm going to move to breads. And so over time, I started experimenting and making different breads. And then my family would rate the bread. And every week I would give a different member of my family, or for the older ones, them and their significant others, the opportunity to say, hey, what do you want me to make next week? And so, 1 week Skylar was like, make a Casatiello bread. Skylar's my 22-year-old son's girlfriend. And so everybody had a different bread choice, and I would just bake them. And I found that it was very therapeutic for me. Well, when I got diagnosed with cancer, my energy level was pretty low, and baking wasn't an option. For anybody who's gone through any type of rectal cancer or colon cancer, the chemo drug that you're given is called Folfox. Folfox, while it doesn't make you lose a lot of your hair, or it doesn't make you super sick, at least most people, it does completely deplete your energy, and you're like a zombie. And kind of like my t-shirts, zombie. Except not dancing zombies.
Probably not.
and so I couldn't bake during that period. And so I was restless. And I said, well, I can't bake. What can I do? I have ADD. I would love to reorganize some of my recipes so that they work for my ADD brain. This is how the book started. There was no intent to write a book. It was simply taking recipes that already existed in my world and reorganizing them, because for me, one of the things that was always out of sequence in a recipe is you do step this, step that, step that, step that. And then down here is, now you're going to turn on the oven, and then you're going to do this. But really the oven step or a certain ingredient got missed, because first they list the ingredients, then they list the thing, how to make it. But it didn't say, how much of the ingredient is in this recipe? I've got to go back up here. So I reorganized recipes to work for my ADD brain. That was how the book started. As I did this, I said, I should put this into a format like a book or something. So I have a book of my recipes, of some of my favorite recipes in an organized fashion for my ADD brain. Well, I shared it with a few friends, and I said, this is great for anyone with ADD. And one of my friends said, no, this is a great book for kids. And I'm like, really? I said, yeah, look at the way it's organized. It's so easy to understand. And so the book that I had originally written to scratch my own itch of organizing my recipes for my ADD brain became Bread Time Stories, which is organized in a way that kids could follow along. And occasionally it'll say, hey, make sure your parents are helping you with this. But it's really well organized for a child's brain, because it's step by step. It's easy to follow. You're not going to mess it up. And it gives you exact, precise amounts, and when to put things in, and when you should preheat the oven. And so all of those things, just, again, it was scratching my own itch. So that's how that book came to be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of looking through it right now also, and I'm noticing, it's not just the words that you put in here, but also the formatting too. Did you have a big part to play in that? Because I'm noticing you have like every step is boxed off on its own. Step one has its own box, step two does, and then...
Yeah, I was really, I'm a little bit of a control freak. And so for me, the formatting was critical, because visually, because it was a step-by-step cookbook, it needed to be in a format that allowed my really chaotic, noisy brain to parse it out without having to think. And so it had to be organized in a way that did that. And that's why the book is formatted the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually writing a blog post right now about this, how important it is to have that formatting because, for your intentions, your audience, to make it simple for the children to understand, you need to make it clear and, like you mentioned multiple times, easy. Like everything stands out, it's in bold font. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about. That's a whole nother aspect of writing books too,
Yeah.
like making sure that people can find the information. I mean, the way that you even have in big bold lettering under the easy peasy bread loaf is just difficulty rating 1, best eaten with butter, jam, or sandwich bread. Like you have it clear, easy to read. Any child can pick it right up. Anybody can pick it right up and they know what to do. So
Yep.
it's very, very well organized. But this book is completely different from your other book too. So I guess, now that we've spoken about, the different writing processes for advertisements, for cookbooks, how did that translate when you went to write your more business-oriented book, the one that's based on Gary Vaynerchuk's work?
So that book was really pressure. I was pressured by a lot of people to write that book. It wasn't my intent to write the book. My intent was to not even to share the story with people. Friends were saying, hey, you really got to share with people how you built this business. You really have to tell people how you went from a nothing in your spare bedroom of your home to this, this company that was growing so fast. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to write a book. That was the first book I had ever written. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to write a book. I don't even know if I'm capable of writing a book because I'm a copywriter. I'm a storyteller. Oh, wait, I'm a storyteller. I can write a book. And so that's how it came to be. I started working on telling the story. But the way I wrote that book was very different from the Bread Time Stories book. Bread Time Stories was a really head down in front of the screen. My other book was I dictated audio notes into my phone and transcribed them and then sent them to my editor, who then did all the polish and made it make sense. Because I would just vomit thoughts and ideas and words into these notes. I still have all of the original notes
Oh
for the
man.
book on my phone. But it was allowing me to share with other people who were trying to grow a business how I took a business from nothing to a multi-million-dollar business in less than 700 days. And it wasn't like I didn't set out on a journey to do that. It was just what happened. And so the book was a way for me to share with others, hey, here's how I did it. Here's why I did the things I did. You can do it too. Here are the things that are going to come up in your head that tell you can't do it. Because we've all been there, right? Even if you're just writing a book, let's say you're not trying to grow a multi-million-dollar company, you're simply writing a book. How many times are you sitting there by yourself working on your manuscript and you have that little voice in your head says, oh, that page sucked, right? Oh, that part of the story blows. You should just delete that, or you should throw that away. You know how many notes I have never thrown away? I don't ever throw away ideas. So this is another thing. Oh, Danielle, I'm so passionate about this. Okay. So behind me, you can see my black backpack, right?
Okay.
In that black backpack, I have a fountain pen. I choose to write with a fountain pen. I don't like ballpoint pens. I don't like felt tips. I am a classic fountain pen. I've got an ink cartridge in it. Like that's how I write.
Wow. Okay.
I have notebooks that go back decades. And on the back table, if I got up right now, on the back table, in fact, I'm going to get up and show you.
Go get it. Go get it. What are you waiting for?
I'm wearing camouflage gray pants. But I have, when I say I have notebooks, I don't have just one, I have many. When I write, all of my ideas, all of my creative thoughts, everything goes in these books. And I don't erase anything because I write it in ink. So for me, I write everything down in ink. It stays in ink. I have multiple pages. When I'm done with a page, I fold it over. And then when I fill the book, I go back, unfold them, and use the other side. And why do I do that? Because everything is an idea. Everything is a thought starter. And when I have an idea, or I think something is like, oh, this could be something, I don't just let it go. I let it cook. And it goes in the book. And then I go back later on and I look at that idea and it sometimes develops into something. So sometimes I'll have these random very dark thoughts or ideas, and I write them down. Is it a joke? Sometimes I'll write a joke. I write jokes for friends that are comics. Why? Because I have a really funny, dark idea that turns into a joke and I send it to them. But don't judge the ideas. And this is a huge thing for anyone writing a book. Don't judge the ideas you have just because you think it's a stupid idea, silly idea, that's lame, whatever. Just write it, because if you don't write it down, you lose that thought, it's gone. And if it stays in your head, it's dead. It'll never see the light of day. So you have to put it down somewhere so you can go back and reference it, even if you think it's the dumbest idea ever. And I will give you a perfect example of this. This is real world, and it happens to be in advertising. So several years back, I don't remember the year. I want to say maybe 2015. Year is irrelevant. So I have a few different businesses. My production company, we were filming a TV pilot for the Design Network. And we're in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho with the client. He designs homes for billionaires. And we're filming one of these beautiful homes. And my first AD, Phil, was sick that day. And the first AD on a production is the person who runs the production crew. And first assistant director, that's what a first AD is. Phil was ill that day. And so the boss had to take over his role. I'm not a great first AD. I'm really good at owning a business. I'm really good at paying people. I'm not good at being a first AD. But I took over the role that day. Phil was really sick. When I say sick, outside, green, painting the shrubs, okay? That kind of sick. Well, the day wraps and we're getting back in the car, the rental car, going back to the Airbnb. And Phil was sitting in the front seat, the client and his daughter in the back. And Phil was like, I'm feeling a little bit better. I think I need something to eat. Now, you wouldn't think after a day of throwing up that you would want pizza. But here we were in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and Phil said, I could use a slice of pizza. We tried to advise against this. We thought it was the worst idea ever. But we found a Mod Pizza in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And we got pizza and we're watching him because we're terrified. We're on the other side of him. We're like, oh God, if he starts to throw up, we're running.
Yeah, anyway, like stay away from me.
Yeah, he's still pale, looking terrible. But as he eats, his color's coming back and the shakiness stopped. And I looked at him and I said, Phil, I know what was wrong with you. And he said, what? I said, you had pizza deficiency syndrome. And in that moment, I'm like, oh my God. And I grabbed my phone and I wrote a note, pizza deficiency syndrome. That was it. That was the note. When I got back to the Airbnb, it went in a book. Fast forward, several years later, Gino's Pizza comes to me and they need a campaign idea. And pizza deficiency syndrome became a TV campaign with multiple ads. And it was about how Americans don't even realize they're suffering from PDS, pizza deficiency syndrome. And so the whole campaign was how to cure that with pizza. So don't ever discount an idea or diminish it as dumb or irrelevant, or I'm never going to use that. Write it down, let it simmer, because at some point you're going to go, oh, I know, I remember this. And you're going to go back to your books and you're going to find it.
I mean, hey, if that's not an example that anybody listening right now should, hold on to for a while, I think, what else is going to be, right? Because any idea you have, as long as you don't forget it, you never know when you're going to use it, right? So just keep that catalog of ideas, that notebook stack you have back there. I love that you're able to just flip right to it. There's so many different points I was thinking about as you were talking through, and I think I want to branch off in two different directions, if that's okay with you. The first,
sure,
which I want to talk about maybe later on, is the idea about how you just made a bunch of notes and you sent that to your editor, because that just goes to show that anybody could write, right? Like, even if you don't think that you're pro at it, as long as you're, getting those ideas out there in some way, if you have a team with you, you can turn it into a book. But yes. I think before going into detail about that, what I really like to touch upon is, more of this note-taking idea, because you showed me all those notebooks back there, but then you also at one point held up your phone and said, I still have the notes from, that first book. So what's going on there? We switched to notebook to phone to notebook. Is there a benefit in using one over the other? What would you recommend?
Yep. Best tool available in the moment. And so for the book, the reason I used the recorder on my phone, the voice recorder and the voice memo on my phone, is twofold. Number one, I could record stream of consciousness, like I'm trying to get an entire thought out. So I call it verbal vomit. I would verbal vomit the entire thing. And if it was 20 minutes long, it was 20 minutes long, but it transcribes it. And so now I've got both audio and transcription, which was really helpful because now I can see what I wrote, take a piece of it, go, okay, this belongs with this belongs with that. But I didn't have to do any of that because my editor was like, just send me everything and then I'll figure out the chapters. And that's what I paid her to do. And she was paid well to do it. And the reality is I would never have been able to figure out how to format, write, chapter, all that stuff in my first book. I was not a professional author. And I still don't consider myself a professional author. I'm just a guy who writes stuff. And the fact that people buy my stuff is kind of cool. But I don't write thinking, oh, 1,000 people are going to buy this, or like, it's crazy that every month I still get royalty payments from Amazon every month. And I'm like, wow, more people bought my book. Oh, right. I forgot. It's still relevant to people, right? It's new to the person who discovers it today. And so, yeah, I kind of went a little bit off in a different direction, but that's what I do.
I like what you did though, because you kind of meshed it back to my other point that I wanted to get around to also is, the role of the editors. So to answer another topic that you brought up though, you don't consider yourself an author. I mean, you have best-selling books out there. People are, you said yourself, still buying on Amazon. So in this day and age, I think that anybody who, defines themselves as an author, it's more about like, as long as you wrote that thing down, whether or not it's, in the form of a book yet, but as long as you're getting those ideas on that notebook or in the transcription on your phone, like we talked about, it's the ideas that matter, right? So,
right.
Authors on Mission, for example, we have a whole team of, we call ourselves the angel writers rather than ghost writers, and editing staff, marketing staff, and so many clients come to me all the time with jumbled ideas just like yours, and then we work together kind of, okay, we need to make sure that this is in organized chapter structure and that everything in the chapter relates to the main idea of your book, and we're able to kind of pull from that. So as long as you have the ideas, which we talked about in the beginning too, you can choose your own topic, whatever you're passionate about. That's all you got to do. You just get those ideas out there. And then these days, you have a whole team of people who can help you put that together. That's what defines an author. So I like,
and I get that. And when I say I don't consider myself an author, that's not my first love. It's just a thing that I do, right? But, and today, like in a 2025 environment, writing is so much easier, and becoming an author is so much easier than it's ever been. And I'll tell you how. For those of you who are not utilizing AI in your research, for those of you who are not using AI to clean up something that you wrote that's just okay but not great, and then send that off to an editor who's trained, like there are so many tools available today and so much knowledge at our disposal, like at our fingertips. When I started writing, so I haven't even written page 1 yet of the paramilitary operations officer, right? Haven't written page 1 of that yet, but I'm working on all the research. And so I went into Perplexity and I did a deep dive. I spent a couple of hours on Perplexity. Tell me everything I need to know about what a paramilitary operations officer in the CIA does, and which led to a lot of information. And from there, it led me to other questions. And so I went down this rabbit hole, but now I can take this rabbit hole and copy and paste it, put it into Claude or ChatGPT, and tell it to organize these for my research and give me a new output. And now it gives me a new output, and I've got everything that makes sense. It's logical, and I can use that for my research when I'm writing the book. So it's amazing the tools that we have available today.
Yeah, and I mean, AI is a great tool for research, and I can get into a whole nother podcast talking to you about, why it's good in some areas and then why you should definitely not be using it to actually write your book. I mean, by nature, AI it's almost like a paradox in itself, because it's pulling from existing writing content and then trying to put itself into writing, and you need a human to help, flesh that out. But that's a whole nother topic. But you're right. I mean, if you want to be an author and you want to get your ideas out there, it's easier than ever. I mean, even in the nature of you can transcribe something right on your phone and it'll, be right there in the writing for you. There's AI devices you can buy these days that literally like little like recorders, and you could just talk to it inside of your phone and it like does all this AI stuff to organize it too. So,
Right.
Amazing point. If you want to write, easy peasy. There's so many different ways.
There's no barriers. You don't even need fingers to be able to write today.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, I have lots of clients who've told me they like, okay, yeah, I sent you these ideas. I'm on the treadmill right now, but I just like voice to texted it. Like, why not? People say you're so busy that you can't write, but find the time because you can do it literally on the treadmill, like I just mentioned, right?
And just aim for 2,000 words a day. Like, you don't have to have people set these ginormous, lofty goals, and no, just set a goal that you can accomplish and do it. Right? If you start the new year off saying, I'm going to lose 100 pounds this year, well, that's a hell of a goal. How about I'm going to go for losing 5 pounds this month? Right? It's a lot easier to just take it in little bite-sized chunks. And I think everybody, you want to get to the end result so fast that you bite off more than you can chew. And then when it's not exactly what you want, you become disheartened. And then you're like, all right, I'm going to shelf this stupid idea for a while, because now it becomes a stupid idea and you never go back to it. And so I think people really have to just dial down like your output, your expectations, and just say, okay, what can I manage to write per day? I can write 2,000 words. 2,000 words a day? Oh my God, we say more than that in a couple of minutes, right? So
I wonder how many words you've said on this podcast, right?
Yeah, sorry, I'm a talker. My bad.
No, I'm not. I was joking because I feel like, and the funny thing is, we could probably plug our transcript into AI and have that answer in like a snap, right? But
yeah,
you're right. I mean, it's not that hard to write that 2,000 words. And I think that goes back to some of the lessons that we've been teaching our listeners today too. I mean, you're going to be able to write your book with more quality if you're inspired by the topic. If you're inspired by that topic, getting those 2,000 words out should be so easy to do, right? You're just going for it. And, it just brings us back to everything we've been talking about. So that's an amazing piece of advice also. I mean, I think that anybody should be listening to what you're saying. You have blog posts out there too, right? And like some videos, people, if they want to find out more about these tips that you're throwing out there to us, they can find that, right?
Yeah, I've got blog posts. I haven't blogged in a while. So again, remember, I'm just coming back from treatment. So I'm just getting back into that business cycle. But when I write blogs, just, I don't write blogs about business. I write blogs about my life experiences and how they relate to advertising or this, or I'll share what I did when I wrote, this ad or created that ad. And so I don't necessarily write with the intent to sell something or motivate someone to buy something. I just share a lot of my life experiences, and which is what I did when I wrote Jab Till It Hurts. I had dinner with Gary in New York in, was it 2017? We went to City Winery in Manhattan, and we had dinner, and we were talking about like, hey, I started this business in March. It's growing really fast. I have no idea what I'm doing with this company. Like, I have no systems, no processes. Like when I started Ad Zombies, it was literally using Apple Mail, and I color coded. This is so bad. Like, I think about it now, I'm like, how did I even start this business this way? I would color code emails. There were tags, and when an order came through, it was yellow. When a payment came through, it was tagged green. And when both pieces were there and we had a creative brief from the client, it was red. So as long as I saw green, yellow, and red for the same job number, it was time to write. And so it was really disorganized. And Gary was like, you need an operations person. You need someone who's got systems and processes behind them. So I found that person, brought them in, and then the company just exploded. But when we were having dinner, one of the things that Gary said is, give it all away. Share everything with people. Don't hold back. And so I really have adopted that as my mantra. I share everything. There's no secrets to the way I do things. I just tell everybody, hey, here's how I do it. Here's how I did it. You can do it too. And there's no secrets. It's not like, oh, but you have to pay $9.95 to access this. I just tell you. And I think if more people did that, if more people were just willing to just share freely and give away the secret sauce, it's okay. Because what happens is people will come to you for your expertise, even if you give them the secret sauce, because they don't want to do the work themselves.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And honestly, just listening to you talk is just fun in itself. Like, even if your blog posts aren't those tips either, I mean, I think that our listeners can learn a lot from you just by you riffing off like you just did, you know what I mean? So that's why I kind of was bringing up the blogs before, because if it's anything to do, like what our conversation was today, just you being yourself, I think a lot of people are learning from. And not to say, of course, the whole idea of sharing your secret sauce, an amazing thing too, another reason to write. But I mean, again, I think that, anybody listening today should be very inspired by what you've done, because all of your insights are things that can help us and help yourself. And it's just a whole big flowing circle, I think. So I love it. As we start to wrap up today, I guess I'm wondering, you've offered us a lot of pieces of advice. We know a lot of the new things that are on the horizon for you in terms of writing. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience today in terms of upcoming projects or any last pieces of advice?
Yeah, I will say this. Most people procrastinate, they delay, rather than just doing the thing that they're passionate about because they're judging the work that they're doing or the thing that they're working on. Don't procrastinate. It might start off and you read it and you go, this sucks. But over time, you're going to get all of the ideas out and you're going to turn that piece of clay that looks like a lumpy turd into something magnificent. So don't judge the things as you're doing them, and don't let that also slow down your process. Just keep writing. And when you can push through the ugly stuff that you're working on, like the things that you're working through or the ideas, when you can push through, you're going to get to that beautiful result faster. I find that a lot of people are disheartened really easily when something is like, oh, it's not exactly what I wanted. I can't tell you how many times an ad would start off, or something that I was working on would start off just like a total abomination. But the idea was there and I knew what I wanted. I just had to figure out how to get there. And so just keep working at it, and don't put down the pen. Don't stop writing on the keyboard, taking notes on your iPad, however you do it. Just keep working through it, because eventually, once you get everything out of your head, you can reorganize it and work it into something.
Hey, I mean, an amazing tip, don't wait. Just get your ideas out there, start writing. Don't let the fear of it not being good enough stop you. I think that's a whole concept, this whole episode, right? If you're passionate about a topic, start writing it. There's a whole team of people, the technology too, that can help you these days. Just go for it.
Yeah, my CIA book may totally suck, but guess what? I'm going to write it.
Hey, you love the topic, you're inspired by it, you have the tools to research anything you might need to make it realistic as it can be. And, if people love the way that you're talking right now in this podcast, or they love the way that you wrote your other books, they're going to flock right to that one to check it out too. I mean, maybe we'll have you back on here to talk about it more when, the release date comes more. That way that everyone can be prepared for it and be ready to pick it up off the shelves.
All right, awesome.
But other than that, I mean, I think this kind of wraps up for today. I think our listeners learned a whole bunch from you, and it's been a lot of fun chatting with you. You're a really fun guy.
Thank you. Just like a mushroom. I'm a fun guy. Sorry,
You're
I couldn't
fun.
resist. Bad dad
Stop.
jokes.
I love the puns. I love it.
No.
But I mean it. Sometimes a fresh conversation is all you need, just to let it all sink in and to know what it's all about, especially with the writing process. So in the course of this podcast, we've covered so much ground. What stands out to me is, your message about kind of embracing who you are and what you're passionate about, and using that to create something meaningful. I think that's kind of what we all got here from here today, and not letting anything hold you back. And that's a really broad term, but it kind of applies to everything that we've discussed.
It does.
Yeah, and so everybody listening today, you can find Ken's work pretty much everywhere. Check out Bread Time Stories and Jab Till It Hurts, and you can explore AdZombies.com for any of your other copywriting needs. And you have a podcast too, don't you? Ad Nerds, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to be spinning the podcast back up. It's been offline again while I was going through treatment, but I'm going to be spinning that back up again here very soon.
Perfect. Well, let us know, and we're more than happy to have you back here to chat about that, or anything else that's coming up. And now that you're back on your feet, hit the ground running, and I'm inspired to learn more about you. I know our listeners will be too. So with that being said, everybody, take his message to heart. If you're inspired by something, keep it going. And with that being said, you've been listening to the Authors on Mission podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Hutchinson, reminding you that your unique perspective isn't just valuable, it might just be your next secret weapon for writing a book. So join us next time for another conversation with another amazing author. And until then, keep pushing boundaries and telling your story. Have an amazing day, everyone. This is Danielle Hutchinson reminding you that somewhere, someone needs the book that only you can write. Visit authorsonmission.com to start your legacy. Until next time, keep leading, keep inspiring, and keep thinking in chapters. Have a great day.